Good morning. My name is Clara Jimenez, and I am honored to serve as today's coordinator. Before we start, a few announcements. If you are new to North Chapel, welcome. And if you are visiting, please consider signing the book at the back of the sanctuary. We are still under COVID precautions, so we request that you continue being masked, and we will hum instead of sing our hymns. Sadly, we are not able to meet for coffee hour, but we hope you will take the opportunity to say hi to old friends and make new ones after the service. Now that the weather is becoming pleasant, maybe we can gather outside. And finally, if you haven't done so already, please turn off your cell phones and put them in silent mode. Today is Mother's Day. May it be a beautiful day for those of you celebrating. We also acknowledge that this day can be hard for those grieving the loss of a child or a mom, or for those whose experience brings pain or disappointment. For some of us, the day may be particularly complicated given current political developments, when the right of a woman to choose when to become a mother is in such a significant peril. If any of these brings a difficulty for you, may you find some comfort and ease on this day. And may humor perhaps bring some comfort on this day as well. Here is a poem by Billy Collins. The Lanyard. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one if that's what you did with them. But that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me into many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light, and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and two clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift, not the warm truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the two-tone lanyard from my hand, I was, as sure as a boy could be, that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. We will now have a moment of meditation.
So there's this story about a lonely man and a hard night that he spent in prison. There were many hard nights in prison, like the night that he missed his family, like the night that he misses his friends and how they used to joke around all the time, like the nights that followed the days after the parole hearings over the years. Having been denied many times, it's hard to be denied so many times. They say that the fastest way out of jail is to commit yourself to a single cause, to promise yourself to get up one more time than you fall down. You do this and you'll live a life of decency and honor, dignity and respect, and you'll find the love that you're looking for, and when you find it, you'll treasure it. There were indeed many hard nights in prison, but the hardest night of all had been the first. You see, the lonely man didn't know anybody, and he was scared on that first night. So he kept mostly to himself before nightfall and the coming darkness. He feared that the darkness would do him in. He wasn't supposed to be in prison, but there he was behind the bars with hundreds of others who would have said the very same. No one feels like they're supposed to be in prison, even though most of them were guilty. One man admitted his guilt freely and unabashedly. His name was Red. We'll get to him a little bit later. He was a good man and had a good sense of humor. But first I need to tell the story about the lonely man and his hard night in prison. So like I said, there were many hard nights, and the days were tough too, but not as hard. The hardest night, perhaps, may have been the first, when that door closed hard and locked, and when the lights went out and the man felt terrible inside. He was terribly afraid of what might happen, and something did. Someone in a distant cell called out a number, loud and clear, 615! And following an outburst, there was a rumbling of laughter, graceful as it died down. And then there was silence. And that silence was broken when another prisoner in a different distant cell called out a different number, loud and clear. The process went on for more than an hour, and the lonely man became less and less afraid. He was calmed, reassured by all of this laughter, but he felt alone nonetheless. Even though he didn't know what was going on, he felt a part of it. The next day in the jail yard, the lonely man had several questions, but he was shy, so he kept his questions to himself. He didn't share his thoughts with anyone. And that next night, it happened again, but this time there were different numbers. I mean, the first one was the same, of course, but they changed as time went on. So the lights went out, and one heard 615 on a rumble of laughter. And then someone yelled out, 227. And another person yelled out, 1104. That one was particularly hilarious. And someone said 782. Each number was followed by a relative level of laughter. The day after this experience in the jail yard, the lonely man could no longer contain himself. He had to share his questions. He had to ask someone what was going on. So he turned to the nearest prisoner and he said, "Hey, what happens at night? What happens in this place?" And the prisoner said, "What do you mean?" And he says, "Well, at nights when the lights go out," and the lonely man said with such curiosity, "people start shouting numbers and start laughing. What is that? Is it some sort of a code or something? Are you guys laughing at me or poking fun?" "Oh," he said, "you're new around here. You mean the joke book," he said. "We're not making fun of you, man. We're just telling jokes to one another." And the lonely man said, "Jokes?" He was confounded. "I didn't hear any jokes. All I heard was numbers. I wrote the numbers down so I'd remember. 615, 227, 1104, 782. I've been trying to figure out how to decode this for hours." And the other man said, "Oh, you're really new around here. Let me tell you what's going on." And the other prisoner explained that in order to pass the time years ago, the prisoners used to sit around and telling jokes to one another during the days in the yard. And the jokes were so funny and the laughter became so raucous and the ritual became so popular that the prison guards felt the need to shut it down. They figured, a joyful revolution was coming. So the jokes were outlawed. The telling of jokes was outlawed on the yard, said the seasoned prisoner, and the whole thing sort of went underground. We made a book out of all the jokes, and we've been telling these jokes for years. We've been laughing together for so long that we don't even bother telling the jokes anymore. We just call them out by number because we know them all by heart. And the seasoned prisoner dug through his belongings that day and gave the lonely man his old joke book. It was really beaten up and falling apart, and the prisoner didn't need it anymore, obviously. And the lonely man joyfully accepted the gift and studied it with unbridled passion, and in less than a week, he had committed the first half of the joke book to memory. His confidence was growing because he could get a better understanding about the nighttime laughter. Finally, the day came when the lonely man had the whole joke book memorized, and he was ready to join in the evening's festivities. And that night, the lights went out and the nightly ritual commenced. The lonely man had the joke book opened to his favorite joke, and this was the joke that struck a chord in him. And things got underway. The numbers and the laughter. 6:15, of course, the ritual beginning. 122 was the next one with a rumble of laughter. 97, 4:06, and the lonely man waited his turn. He waited for the proper opening, and when it arrived, the lonely man jumped in and said, 2:43. His articulation was precise, his voice was loud enough, but nobody, and I mean no one, even so much as chuckled. No one spoke another number or laughed for the rest of the night. The next day in the jail yard, the lonely man found the seasoned prisoner, the one who had given him his joke book, and he said, "Tell me, what's going on? What happened last night? I spoke for the first time and no one laughed. Everything stopped. I don't understand what's happening." And the seasoned prisoner said, "Yeah, I thought that might have been you. Couldn't tell in the darkness." And the lonely man said, "I don't understand. I picked the best joke in the book." And the seasoned prisoner said, "Yeah, you did. Number 243, that's a classic. That's one of our old-time favorites." "So what happened then, man? I just don't get it." I did just what I was supposed to do." And then the seasoned prisoner said to him, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. Some guys just can't tell a joke." Now, if you didn't like that story, I welcome your critique. But please know that I am newly free. I wasn't trying to entertain. I didn't tell that story with the goal of receiving approval of any kind. I shared the story because I believe it's important for our world. It's something that my mother taught me years and years ago. I'm just catching up with her wisdom now. Good morning and good Sunday. I hope that this new day finds you well. Today is Sunday, May the 8th. It's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day, Mama. Today is the day we celebrate those beings, those lovely beings who have brought us into this world. From near nothingness, from deepest darkness, we were born into the miracle of life to grow and to beautify and to befriend and to fall in love and to tell bad jokes in front of lovely people who don't deserve it. Can you believe that the miracle of holy life has come to this? Mediocre comedy. There's a brilliant comedian named Tig Notaro. Does anyone know Tig Notaro? I adore her. I think she's outrageously funny. She was on the Conan O'Brien show some time ago, soon after having undergone a double mastectomy. She was totally open about it. Conan asked her questions about it directly, and she said, "Well, I went through a lot last year, and not to be totally intense or heavy or serious or anything, but I learned that it's important to be present and to live your life. And as she's saying these words, she's fidgeting with something in her pocket, and she says, oh, I forgot to turn my phone off. And the audience chuckles with the irony. Conan seems slightly uncomfortable and tries to keep the interview from going off the rails. He gently prompts his guests. You were saying that you only get one life, and this is enough to get things going again. Tig Notaro continues on. She says, yeah. You only get one life, and you've got to love the people that you're with and enjoy life, and just to be, and her phone is going off again. She's distracted as she completes her sentence, looking at her phone. She says, it's important, just to be present. At which point, she's obviously not present, and Conan sees that he's being taken in, and that we've all been taken in, and that she has captured us, enlisted everybody, holding us all captive in what clearly is a joyful revolution. There are yellow sheets of paper populating the sanctuary this morning. I hope that you've gotten a chance to see them. They're all the same. It's a cartoon of a priest in a Christian pulpit somewhere, and the caption reads, "Let us pray, and if any of you are Unitarians, do whatever it is that you do." I posted this 16 hours ago on my Facebook page, and I've already received 143 likes. I love the readiness of my Facebook friends to appreciate the beauty of this. We strive not simply to reject the past as it is handed down to us, but to make that past meaningful in the here and now. What is this if it is not a joyful revolution? My mom used to roll her eyes. My dad thought that he was funny. And he would try to tell us jokes, but my mom would roll her eyes. And that only made my dad laugh more. And when you didn't understand the joke in the first place, it's just fun to watch the two of them laugh. You're not supposed to laugh too hard at your own jokes, though. It's sort of a rule or something. My father disposed of that rule as quickly as I could, or he never knew it, because my dad thought of himself as his own comedian. He laughed at his own jokes, but really it was my mom who brought us all of the magic. We each do our part. My dad would bring the jokes, usually pretty bad ones, and my mom would roll her eyes dismissively, and to make sure that the joke was really funny. I got my dad once really bad. I said, "Hey Dad, I know a knock-knock joke." And he said, "What is it?" And I said, "Start." And he said, "Okay, knock knock." And I said, "Who's there?" And he didn't know. It wasn't funny to him, but I thought it was funny. Anyway, when my dad would tell bad jokes, my mother would not laugh. And by not laughing, she did something special. She's not an enthusiast. She was not a spousal cheerleader, at least not as this faithful son would have imagined her to be. She's paradoxical. She's a trickster. She made sure that things were funny by making sure that my dad looked a little foolish. Now, I'm not sorry, Mom, I'm just kidding. Now, I'm not sure that her heart was always in the right place when she was doing this, by the way, but I'm sure that she was never mean about it. It's just that my dad had a bad habit of getting halfway through the jokes before his own laughter would kick in and get the better of him. His laughter would begin, anticipating the punchline and ruining the moment of surprise. It was the way that my mom made fun of him that made the jokes so funny, and that made the laughter last even through today, and I'm grateful for that. We're up against some pretty tough things today, these days. The violence in Ukraine, the threats to Roe v. Wade, the threats against Anthony Fauci by John Bennett from Oklahoma, the GOP leader who asked for Fauci to be put before a firing squad, for trying his best to save lives against the danger of a disease that has taken millions. We're frightened now, even if we're not admitting this to ourselves. And we're trying to make political hay of the denial of our fear. Does that make sense? Something that could return us to our senses is genuine laughter. We pick our prisons in this life, and we pick also when we might get free. So I'm quite serious about joking around. It's no laughing matter. Now, there's a poem by Rick Maston, I've shared it once before. It's called The Prisoners. It goes like this. Although I have seen photos of those rugged, weary men, still I think I envy them, the prisoners. Caught and confined in some good and holy war, which every war has been. Stubbornly clinging to secret information for which I'd rather die than tell, caught in a roach or rat-infested cell, my eye fixed on that thin sliver of hope, the crack of light that keeps us alive in this solitary confinement. Yes, there have been times when I've wished it were a simpler prison, for out here, in this giant field of sunshine, it is far, far more difficult to plan the great escape. When life is beautiful around us, it's sometimes hard to imagine that we're still caught, that we still need to find a way to break free somehow. A man named Andy Dufresne was falsely imprisoned at one point. In 1982, Stephen King wrote a book called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. It was made into a movie in 1994 starring Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, who played the character named Red, the guy I talked about earlier. Tim Robbins played Andy Dufresne, and he was imprisoned by meaninglessness. He was falsely accused of doing something that he did not do, but he couldn't prove his innocence. Now, the narrative climax of the film is the part about Andy's escape, about how he broke into a sewage pipe and climbed hundreds and hundreds of yards to freedom through foul-smelling. The quote that is in the movie, he says, Morgan Freeman, Red, who plays as a narrator, acts as a narrator in the film, says, Andy Dufresne crawled to freedom through 500 yards of foulness that I can't even imagine. Or maybe I just don't want to. 500 yards, the length of 5 football fields, just shy of half a mile. The movie shows this, how gross it was. You know, Stephen King's really good at gross. Stephen King is great at it. The disgusting factor builds and builds and builds into this great release where the Shawshank prison sewage pipe dumps its what it carries into the flowing waters of a nearby brook. It's raining hard outside, and Andy falls out of the pipe, and he washes himself clean in the water, and the hard rain storming down on him cleanses him to his soul as he strips away the clothes that he wore through the pipe and opens a plastic pack that contains clean material, and he puts that on and moves through the rest of the film. The spiritual climax of the movie happens much earlier. The spiritual climax in the movie happens when Andy is still very much imprisoned. The spiritual climax arrives by way of music, by way of Mozart, actually. Andy Dufresne has ingratiated himself with the wardens and the levels at the guards at the highest level of the prison. He was a hotshot banker on the outside, so he made himself useful by offering sound financial advice to the warden and to the guards in charge. He was fully trusted by them over time. He was trusted by those who held him captive, and he earned many perks and privileges from them. And he did many special projects. One of those projects was the creation of a prison library, books and audio recordings. One day, after incessantly nagging, a truckload of books and records was delivered to the warden's office. The warden wasn't very happy about it. His office had become overcrowded with new library materials, so much that he could not even find his desk. The warden angrily summoned Andy Dufresne and ordered him to clean up the mess as he was heading off for a meeting off-site. He was adamant. He demanded that the library materials be removed from his office immediately. By the time that he returned, he expected his office to be clean. And then he departed for his meeting. For good reason, Andy was smiling as the warden ordered him around. His campaign to create a library had been profoundly successful. He sorted through books written by Robert Louis Stevenson and Alexander Dumas. He sorted through through records by Hank Williams and Johann Sebastian Bach, and he came upon a recording of The Marriage of Figaro, an opera by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, and he froze with irony. He removed the vinyl from its protective plastic sleeve and he set it on a turntable and he listened. The music touched him, the music freed him. He wanted to share this experience of metaphysical relief. He wanted to play a joke of sorts for the prisoners. So he locked the warden's office door from the inside and he brought the warden's microphone across the room and positioned it advantageously next to the turntable. The warden's microphone was the one he used periodically to publicly address all of the prisoners at once. There were speakers in the dining halls and in the recreation areas. There were speakers in the prison yards and along the fence lines. There were speakers in the watchtowers and in the prison cells. There was no square inch of the prison grounds that could escape the warden's voice when it was his intention to be heard. And he knew this, of course, and he broadcast Mozart's message far and wide. And just as the warden was returning, obviously the warden was not pleased. That little stunt earned Andy Dufresne 2 weeks in solitary confinement. Just 2 weeks alone, that was the cost of freedom. And it was well worth it for everyone. Even if you couldn't speak the language, the opera was in Italian. I know this because Morgan Freeman said that it was worth it himself. Morgan Freeman, the man who played Red. Morgan Freeman, his character Red, said, "I have no idea to this day what those two Italian ladies were singing about. The truth is, I don't want to know. Some things are best left unsaid. I'd like to think that they were singing about something so beautiful that it can't be expressed in words, and it makes your heart ache because of it." He said, "I tell you that those voices soared higher and farther than anyone in this great place dares to dream. It was like some beautiful bird had flapped into our drab little cage and made these walls dissolve away, and for the briefest of moments, every last man in Shawshank felt free." My mom would roll her eyes because my dad wasn't all that funny. And she gave to us a gift of being present and a gift of being free. Mothers give birth to freedom and to life itself. They give birth to laughter, which is our best means of defying gravity, of walking out onto the gentle breeze and flying free. In these days that challenge us and that are beautiful at the very same time, let us know and let us remember how to keep our balance, how to stay grounded even against the slings and arrows that we face. May we find the freedom and the laughter that we need to know who it is that we are, to accept that person, and to know that for every time we fall, we will get up at least one more time. May it be so. Blessed be. Happy Mother's Day, and amen.